You'll be talking today about plasma, lessons learned, and our path forward in 2026 and beyond. Please, David.
A bit of latency before you're clapping. Okay, I've been doing plasma for a long time and KD for a long time, and I thought I'd talk about some things that I've learned from doing this, most of which should be applicable to most projects, but with case studies of things that happened in plasma. So hopefully there'll be no really old plasma people just turn up out of the blue and sit in the front row to surprise me. Sabas. So, lessons learned. Most important thing, what's our greatest assets within KDE or plasma? Just shout some things out. David. Okay. No, seriously, people. David Forth, for example, it's a good suggestion somebody shouted out, David's. People change over time, so it's not the people that make the project great, because they keep changing. It's not our asset that we have. So what makes it great is not our asset. What else? Wow, there's hundreds of you here. What makes a project, what's our biggest asset? Is it a code? It's not a people, it's not a code, because if I forked plasma right now, no one would care. And it's not our age of the code, because otherwise that makes Trinity better than us. Our biggest asset is our little logo and our name and our reputation. So if this was a 2-slide talk, I would say, biggest lesson, protect your reputation and most above anything else. Reputation and branding is more important than anything, and you should protect it. This isn't a 2-slide talk, so I'm going to go into some more details. Talking about lessons in plasma, first need to address where we are right now. This green line, because green's a plasma color, this is our Arch package tracker, and we've had our ups and downs. This is clearly where some packaging changed, but we've been on an upward trend. Things are going quite well in plasma, but we've had issues, as I'm sure everyone's aware. So first up, let's address the elephant in the room. What's plasma's biggest thing in our history? There's 4 elephants, exactly, 4.0 elephants. So I'll get it out of the way, because I don't want to dwell on it. It was rushed. We tried to do too much in too little time. That's all there was to it, trying to do too much in too little time. So this comes up again and again. You want to get a feature in. So there's 2 questions. Will you ever regret taking your time? And the answer is yes. There are plenty of times where you haven't pushed a feature, and then you read on social media, why hasn't KDE fixed blah? Or why am I still getting this issue which can only be fixed by something? So you will regret it. But if you rush, you can also regret it. Yes, exactly. The difference is this one, a month later, you've forgotten about it. 2 months later, you won't care. Regret rushing, that will stick with you forever. Plasma 4.0 was 17 years ago, and there's people on stages still talking about it today. Sure. Okay, we'll move on quickly then. No, but seriously, online people still do. It still comes up. See, lessons. Yeah, people still talk about it. And people will move away if they can't do their work. But getting them back is harder, because that's making them change from something that does work to something that works potentially better. So losing people is easier than winning people. So keep hold of your existing users. And from a practical point of view, if you can split things up, split things up. It gives you option to take more time. And good goals aren't about trying to do lots and lots and lots and lots of different things. Good goals should be to get into all the government in Germany, like a presentation we saw this morning. A good goal isn't to do that and to make a spaceship and to make a game engine and to do lots of things. Good goals are about achieving lots, not doing lots of things. I'll go to a different case study. Okay, we're talking about Baloo. It's actually positive. Baloo, I need to set the time back. We were coming from having this quirky big database called Nepomuk. And it was problematic. Lots of people turned it off because it was problematic. And then this was a rewrite to save everything. And credit where credit's due, relatively, it was amazing. It was hundreds of times faster. It was more solid. It was good. And then a decision was made to not have a UI to turn it off because we should be proud and confident in our projects. Right? And you're laughing. It's a trap to fall into. That's why I'm repeating it, because you laugh at some ridiculous thing, but we do that sort of thing again and again. So it's an easy trap. So your lesson is, don't be overconfident. And once a reputation is set, it's very, very hard to shake it. You only have one shot at a first release, and people will remember that. So another case study. This is moving onwards onto nearer Plasma 5. We were catching a stride. Things were looking pretty good. We're getting confident. And we used to have a very complicated release cycle. A UI freeze, a string freeze, a feature freeze, alpha 1, beta 1, beta 2, because we were worried we would run out of Greek letters. RC1, RC2. It was complicated, and it was a 6-month cycle. And then it pivoted to a 3-month cycle with no freezes, and scarcely any beta, just one RC. And it didn't really pan out. Over time, we just sort of slowly worked our way back up to adding a freezes back, adding a betas back, adding all of the things back again. And the lesson here is that if a policy isn't working, don't just do the extreme opposite, because that probably won't work either. It's tempting. This isn't working, therefore the opposite will, but don't. Sort of dial it back. And to give a recent example, we used to go a bit overboard with the promo for our beta announcements. They were as good as a real thing. There was videos, the whole text, pictures, and the promo team quite rightly said, well, that's a bit stupid. You've saved us nothing for your big day. And now I think we've gone a bit too extreme and don't mention it at all. And again, it's all about finding that balance. It was just an example of, if something's isn't working, iterate. I've talked a lot about releases. I'm going to talk a bit more about the art of releases, because there is a bunch of lessons. When something's in a merge request, it will be used by 1, 2, if somebody bothers to test it, maybe 10 people maximum. When it's on master, it'll be used by at least 10 people, maybe 100, maybe 1,000, but roughly that ballpark. It's definitely a lot more. When it's available to people in distributions through some mechanism, be it FlatHub or in a beta or some form, that goes up to 100 to 1,000 users. Users who have to do a step, but then are able to get it. And we're going up exponentially. That's the key thing here. And my exponentials run out soon, because when you get to being available for users, things jump up massively. It's at least maybe 1,000, maybe 100,000 people, depending on your project, if it's just available, but off by default. And when things are on by default, then we go to 100,000 to 10 million people. I don't know exact numbers. I've put quite a wide range here, but I use a basis somewhere in that region. So if you ever skip a step, you're making life very difficult for yourself, because you want to catch things as early as possible. The earlier, higher up the chain you catch things, the better. So if a bug affects 1% of the people, you're not going to catch it in a merge request. You might not catch it in master. You might do, if you're lucky, if you keep it on master for a long time. So that's why it's good to have a freeze, a feature freeze, before your beta, so you have a chance to capture things that are in master. And it's why it's good to have a beta, to have more people test things, and why it's also good to, if you can, go off by default first, get some feedback, and then turn it on. And obviously, this changes depending on the size of what you're doing. If you're just changing your wallpaper, you can skip a couple of steps. If you're porting to Wayland, this available for users is a state you want to be in for a long, long time, because it's such a big change with many external factors. So that's where you need to be placing this. Depends on the size of your change, but the slower you go through each of these steps and don't skip any, the better your end product for users will be. That's also what makes cherry-picking features so bad, so difficult. If you fix a bug, you fix it in master, and then it goes directly to all of these people when you cherry pick it back to a stable branch. So you should be very selective in what you're cherry picking. There should be a break for your new slide. This is why it doesn't make sense. Okay. So another topic, as well as releases, something I think we've got better at is understanding our users. And I'm going to go through a case study of Plasma 4. Does anyone remember this? Okay, got a little cheer. Wasn't expecting it. So, okay. So to talk everyone through this, this was called a cashew, because it looks like some sort of cashew, and it was bejazzled with some jewels over here. And it brought down a menu of desktop session-specific things. And people hated it. Like, really hated it. It got quite nasty to the point that people hated it. I'm going to break down why people hated it, according to me, but I've got your microphone, so I'm right, because that's how this works. So why did it fail? You can make a product that is simple and opinionated, where we decide things for users. And you've got your Chromebooks and Gnomes, and it's a really good product. You can make something that's really complicated, where people are modifying code from source, like with hyperlands and displays, and it's a really good product. You can try and be like Plasma, simple by default, powerful when needed, and cover a wide range. But what you absolutely can't do is be a bit of both. You can't be opinionated and let people configure things. And the reason the cashew failed was you could choose to have an analog clock that's upside down. You could choose to have 5 panels or 0 panels. You could choose to have notes displayed on your desktop in a big way or in a small way or in wingdings. But you couldn't choose to hide this little cashew in the corner. And that was a problem. You need to be consistent within yourself. If you're consistent within your product, you will have an audience. If you're inconsistent, who's your audience? People will always be a little bit annoyed. So, understanding our user base. Is this our user base? The people who talk on Reddit, Phoronix, Facebook, YouTubers in Hawaiian shirts? Shout things out. Is that our audience? Oh. Partially. Oh, somebody hedging their bets. Do they donate was one of the things shouted out over here. Okay, that could be our way of differentiating them. I've made a simpler statement. No, they're not our entire user base. To give an example, I had a bug report the other day, or a wish list, sorry, of somebody asking for a feature where in your Wi-Fi connection manager, if you choose your Wi-Fi network, there should be a setting to change whether you also change your screensaver. Right? It's valid, right? A guy actually had a problem they were trying to fix. But if you take everybody at face value, you are going to make a rubbish product. And if you just keep adding features because these people request it, you're going to get a rubbish product. So they're not our sole user base. But they're very important. These people, the Facebooks and the Redditors, and the people who follow talks on live stream or come to conferences, they're our ambassadors. Right? If we want to get other people to use KDE, you need to win over these people, the ambassadors, the people who go out and tell other people to use KDE. So you need them on their side. So if you get consistent complaints from people, they're normally on the mark. And every time we've held out on a policy, like double-click, people who prefer double-click are wrong. But was it a right choice to change? Probably. Like, we changed our default because we kept getting feedback about this. And I held back, but lesson learned, I think it was the right thing to do. And there's so many other situations where we've pushed back, like Kakashu, which was there for years, but we ended up changing it anyway. And when feedback comes, you do have to, at some point, acknowledge it and sort of be on top of it and win them over. And that's also what makes this a commit digest that we used to have in KDE 3 and Nate's blog this week in KDE. The reason they're so important, it don't target users. Users aren't going to read them, because why would a user go out and read the blogs of a developer of a product they use? I don't read the blogs of any other products I use. Yeah, see, it's weird. But people do. I mean, back when I was a KDE fanboy, I used to be refreshing Planet KDE, hoping to get some new gem. And it's those people that you need to win over. So that's why they're so important. And ultimately, we've chased lots of different user bases. There was a fad of saying, well, normal Windows users don't know how to do this. Normal Windows users don't know what a network is, and trying to come up with these hypothetical user bases. But our biggest successes so far have come from our core product as we've made it. So Steam Deck, we've had some government rollouts where it's what we've been doing all along has actually sold, and when we've chased netbooks or phones or something, they've taken a lot. It shouldn't be at the expense of our core product. So yeah, don't go chasing bigger markets at the expense of your current one. You can still chase them, but make sure you separate it. Also, we should focus on what makes us good, what makes us different, our unique selling points. It's easy to look at, I mean, Gnome are doing some amazing things. They're getting a lot of things right. But if we just copied them, we would have nothing. We shouldn't just copy them because they're doing some good stuff. We should look at what they're doing differently that we, in our opinion, do better, and double down on that, make a different product. And that really helps. So, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about some of the code problems. And most of our code problems all comes down to where we've half solved something. So I'm going to go for a case study, theming, and aligning images. So our themes that we've got, your Plasma themes, that's been an absolute success story. There's nearly 1,000 on the store, like 911. I looked it up whilst doing these slides this morning. I mean, a week ago. And some are really impressive. Like, I go on the Reddits and the Facebooks, and you see all your screenshots, and I don't recognize our own product if it wasn't in the description. People doing some really cool things are really impressive. That's great. And overall, hasn't cost us that much. It's been a lot of benefit, not that much cost. And I'm someone who generally hates theming, but I have to say, people are doing some cool stuff. And why did it work? We had lots of tooling. There's a Plasma theme explorer where you can see all the different components. We had documentation. It could be better, but we had some documentation, and we had a distribution process. Yeah, it was a success story. So now let's look at a non-success story. It's a screen locker. So this, you could load any arbitrary QML, and users could supply it, and it would replace it, and it would theme it by changing, effectively, different code. And this was extremely problematic. It held us back, because every time you want to add a feature, that changes the QML. But what about themes? And then you can't implement fingerprint reading because it might break some themes. You can't add a feature. You can't change anything. And it caused our code to be messy, and it held us back. So there was a huge cost to it. But was there also a benefit to it? No, because nobody used it. So we had this cost and no benefit. And it was because writing QML is quite difficult to get into nitty-gritty. Making a UI is really easy. Adding accessibility and keyboard navigation, and maybe somebody's got a different size screen to you, selfish people. That makes things difficult. We also provided absolutely no documentation whatsoever that this even existed. So it's not a surprise that literally nobody did this. And at the end of the day, what most people actually wanted was the default plus a few extra settings. And I always used to push back on extra settings because, well, we have this other mechanism. And generally, it's an anti-pattern to have two different mechanisms to solve the same problem. But that meant we weren't actually delivering what the user wanted. So a lesson, most things have an opportunity and a cost, or a risk. And you need to look at, is this working? Or is it giving us a benefit, and is it costing us? And if you are going to do something, make sure you go all in and actually do it, because otherwise what you're left with is a cost and no opportunity or no benefit. So if you're going to do something, commit to doing it. The other thing that led to this cost-reward issue was solving problems that didn't exist, like coming up with libraries for a future use case which nobody actually ended up using. Doing things because they're interesting tech challenges, that just makes life harder for everybody. Or solving problems to start with, wouldn't it be cool if? Like, we have this wallpaper that's there to show off the capabilities of Q Graphics View, a technology from 15 years ago. And we can't delete it because removing things is difficult. Maybe somebody has it set. So don't. It's better to not do that sort of thing. Code quality. I'm going to sort of just run through this. I'm not going to go into any technical details. So quick-fire observations that I've seen from doing this for a long time. Extra time on a review will pay for itself. If someone's being a dick on review and taking ages talking about a niche use case, it's because they care about your product. And it's annoying, but they're being annoying for a reason. Unless they're complaining about white space. You should always optimize for simplicity and maintainability above anything else. Even if it fixes a bug, even if it makes things faster, this is the one goal you need to focus on. Another observation. You need to do some workarounds at times because it's not acceptable to just say, well, it's somebody else's problem, right? Because we depend on a library. You need to do some workarounds. But not all workarounds cause the same amount of tech debt. If there's a problem at a library, fixing it is really difficult. Like if you want to change who does a size hints on a scroll bar, people rely on it, it causes problems. If you add in a queue timer to work around a problem, other people rely on it, it's really difficult to fix. If there's a problem in a digital clock applet, like this high-level code, it's not a problem. Worst case, I just delete it and rewrite the whole thing from scratch. So when looking at hacks and workaround and code, it's important to focus on different areas to different amounts. This is a policy we did in Plasma that I think had a really net benefit, and I'm going to look at some cute people in the room. We came up with this policy. If you're working on a cute bug, you must file a decent, like with a little test case, bug report upstream and link that in your code. So it's an example that actually came up the week I was thinking about these slides. I was wondering why this was the case after spending ages debugging something. And now I can open that bug report, see that Fabian's fixed it because he's a legend, and I can just delete this bit of code or change it delayed in this case. Brilliant. But it was a surprise, and this is why I'm sharing it with you. It was a surprise that happened. See, said there'd be a surprise. So some of the time, we made a ticket on Jira, and Fabian would fix it because he's a legend, or maybe it doesn't get fixed. But as often, we'd be writing a unit test, finding it's really difficult to make a minimum reproducer until you look in your Qt code to work out how to make a minimum reproducer, at which point you know exactly how to fix it. And if you know how to fix it, you can just submit a merge request instead. So as often, we just started fixing Qt. So this policy really helped there. But you'll notice there's this big white space area. And what happened the majority of the time, and these are anecdotal evidence rather than fixed numbers, wasn't actually a bug in Qt after all. It was my own code. And people were putting in workarounds when they didn't actually need to put in a workaround in the first place. And we got better code from having this policy. So I recommend having that policy in your projects. Bugs. Sentry has been an absolute game changer. I was hoping to do this talk at the same time as Harold so I can talk nice things about him. But now he's here, so I'm not going to. It's been amazing, and the reason it's been amazing is prioritization. This bug, over here, 1,000 hits this week. This bug, a 20th of that. So this bug is 20 times more important to deal with than this one. And we didn't have those numbers before. We were just randomly doing things. So Sentry has been great, but there was another surprise observation. It doesn't match Bugzilla. We still had Bugzilla and people reporting things from it by hand. So this one was the top one from that previous screenshot. 1,100 hits on Sentry. There's one ticket on Bugzilla. This other one is an arch packaging issue that caused our software to crash. 35 hits on Bugzilla on Sentry, so a real thing, some people reporting it. 4 tickets on Bugzilla. And I can't explain it, right? Maybe it's because it was Arch users and they're the best users. Maybe because it was really easy to reproduce. You had some easily reproducible steps, and that helps people want to report bugs. I don't know what it was, but generally speaking, we used to just follow Bugzilla, and we didn't have the data on what to do properly. So why Sentry works? You can prioritize what's important. It automates some of your grunt work, because handling duplicates on Bugzilla was a complete waste of time, and you shouldn't be doing tasks that can be automated. And most importantly, you can focus only on what matters, what's new. On Bugzilla, if somebody filed a crash report 3 years ago, backtrace isn't relevant. If they filed a feature request and there's the only comment on it, it's not relevant. You only want to focus on the things that are happening now. So that's why Sentry works. It acts more like Reddit, where you can't see anything that happened a week ago. And that's how we've got better at Bugzilla. We came up with a policy of actually using a severity status in Bugzilla and having a queue of very high important bugs. Because if you open a list and there's 1,000 bugs, it's overwhelming, you're not going to do any. If you have a very small list, and I've said, if this list ever gets over 10 entries, it's meaningless because I'm just going to go, can't do any up, close it. But if there's only 5 very high priority bugs, I'll be like, well, I can get it down to 4, or I can get it down to 3. It becomes achievable. It becomes a target you can actually do. And we also try to automate more. If something's in needs info state for more than 2 weeks, just close it. You need to be aggressive in closing it so you can see what matters. And also, we've been making an effort on focusing things, triaging things as they come in. Because if you need a response from a user, no one's going to respond to a bug report they filed a month ago. They stopped using your software by that point. You need to respond within 24 hours. So what's the current trajectory within Plasma? I think we're doing quite well. I don't think we're really adding gimmicks anymore. We're really focusing on making our existing features better. And that's features themselves, but we're focusing on our weak points. And I think it's generally more of a trend of not adding settings, but adding settings that make users' hardware work better. I think there's more of a focus on hardware right now and making your hardware give the maximum it can for you. So I think I've nailed the timing based on the slides that are being handed out. So we can do some questions, or we could go to lunch early.
So, same deal. If you want to get in line for questions, we have one already. Just raise your hand. We'll get you in the stack. Also, if you're listening to the stream online, hopefully it's working. I hear there's been some issues with it. But bring them up in chat. And somebody, I think the other Tobias was here. Yes, you're watching. So go ahead. Please.
So you mentioned we're not adding new gimmicks, which generally I would say is true and is a good idea. We are, however, adding a bunch of things to Plasma, like our own login manager, our own virtual keyboard, initial setup system, and so on, which are all great ideas and good things to do, but how do we balance that with the limited time we have?
That's a really good question. I mean, maybe deleting some of the less used stuff is an option. It's things that can be outsourced now. Like, we don't need to do our own way of handling processes in a session because we have tools that do it for us, like systemd, which are amazing. So the more we can outsource, that's brilliant. I mean, we don't have our own audio daemon like we used to have in the past. We have Pulse Audio. So as long as we're expunging things at the same rate we're adding things, that's good. Other than that, you're right, it's a challenge. Kai.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some context on the cashew thing because I think you glanced over it. The reason the cashew existed was because Plasma is so configurable. You could actually change what happens when you right-click the desktop. So you could remove the context menu, and then the cashew was the only option to go back to settings. And then we added an option to remove the cashew, and then people disabled the context menu, and then they ended up in exactly that situation we didn't want them to go, which what is the reason the cashew was there.
And I think
So-
the important takeaway from that, like, you're absolutely right of what happened. But the takeaway from there is focus on what people are actually asking for. Because the reason we removed the right-click context menu was for a really niche case of if you want to emulate OpenBox and have a launcher on your context menu. So with this niche feature that was hidden away for nobody, I don't know anybody who uses that feature, and that took priority over something that was really visible in everybody's face. So it's about prioritization there. And you can't just add more options. You're right, adding more options isn't a solution. Choosing which options to add is hard, but it's the right way.
I use that feature, the right-click context launcher.
Do you really? To people on the live stream, they're lying to you.
You said that we should not add things because wouldn't it be cool if? But isn't that how we have gotten here in the first place? Wouldn't it be cool if we could do, for example, all of those doing the travel assistant things? That basically started out of, wouldn't it be cool if?
Okay, I like to think that started with, wouldn't it be helpful if? Because it is helpful, right? If you can phrase it as, wouldn't it be helpful if, it's good. And I wasn't in that conversation. Maybe it did start off as, wouldn't it be cool if? But the point I was trying to make was, make sure you're solving a problem the users actually have. And that means taking a cool idea and then reflecting on it and saying, or actually, is that solving a problem? And in your case, yes, it did solve a problem. In all cases, like a wallpaper that goes, ooh, it doesn't solve a problem, right? So it's about just thinking about that side of things. Sebas.
Hi. Since you brought up 4.0, first of all, I was release manager back then, so I take at least some part of the responsibility.
I mean, I wasn't here to be a blame game, right?
No offense taken at all.
Yeah.
I just want to add some context because I think that usually gets lost in the communication towards our users. But the community was in a really, really hard place before the 4.0 release because it took very long. We basically rewrote everything, and you don't attract people if you don't have a release at least on the horizon. And I mean, you've been running scripts on commits, right? Ask David to look at the commits and the number of authors before 4.0, and you see a decline, and it was not a healthy one. So we were losing people. We pretty much just had to get it out. Should have we done better? Were there mistakes made? Absolutely, absolutely. But it was also more and more a question of life and death at that point.
Yeah. And I think we actually had a similar situation. Like, it's about balance. Everything's about balance. When we came into Framework 6, we were so afraid of starting that nobody did any work. There was things we could have done before we branched, and nobody did any of that stuff because they couldn't actively work on it. And there is that balance, 100%. And it's only when we branched that we got a flood of activity. So, yeah, 100% balance. But also reducing your goals, how much work you're trying to do in the first place.
So now that we covered 4.0, looking back, what do you think about how 6.0 went?
We'll discuss that when 7.0 comes back. I mean, I think generally 6.0 as a 0.0 was a surprisingly good release because people were a little bit afraid of things that have happened in the past. And I'm doing this because there's new faces, right? And we need to sort of hammer a message of what we've learned so that when we get to KD7, KD8, or whatever names we use, that we don't repeat the same mistakes. But in general, Plasma 6, Framework 6, applications, whatever, that went really well. But I think it's also good to sort of reflect on whether they went well. And we should do, as a community, every time we make a decision, we should do more of that, looking back and having that retroactive. Did it work? Because I don't think we do that enough.
Real quick, they're setting up lunch. It'll take an extra 5 minutes or so, so we've got a little bit more time for questions. So keep going. I didn't make this decision. I wasn't consulted.
So adding on the question on which options are worth adding, which options are worth adding, and that being a hard decision to make. So I'm also personally a software developer, and I have a amateur UX design background. Like I read books, that's it. It just feels like we do still have options that are too powerful, which on the one hand I appreciate, because if I don't like something I can change it. On the other hand, my amateur UX background says there should be an easier way to be equally as powerful and customizable with a simpler set of options. So a bit of an open-ended question here. Do we maybe have too many programmers in the community and we need more UX designers?
Well, I wouldn't phrase it as too many programmers, but too few designers, yes. And you're right about too many options. I'm going to give a little example of something. In the clock, we have a thing where you can put in your own custom date format, because there are so many date formats in the world. And this one guy put his date format in as day, minute, year. Right, which is a date format more outrageous than American. Right? And this screenshot happened because obviously it came up with saying 5/39/2025. And people were like, oh, KDE is so buggy. And it was on the social media, under software gore, and people were saying, look how buggy KDE is. And I mean, that hurts our reputation, because people see it, I don't get the context of this user's an idiot. Because, I mean, it is our fault. It's our fault as well, as the user being an idiot. I mean, the fact he posted it as a bug is very annoying. I would have told him if it had just been on Bugzilla. But yes, that sort of thing, ideally, we should find better ways to do it. Coming up with better ways is hard. And one thing that happens in open source is when you get designers, when you have a well-designed product, designers come and join that product because it's the one that's well-designed. Everything in open source very much is like a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I mean, projects that have good unit tests get more unit tests. Projects that have good designers get more designers. Projects that have written really complicated code to show off, they get complicated developers joining them. Everything is a very self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's very difficult to get out of that. And I'm hoping you, having read your book on UX design, will come in and help start fixing that.
Yeah, so since you talked about it would be cool versus it would be useful, do we end up rejecting patches because they are just the former, like they are only cool? Because I would hate to see wobbly windows go away.
Yeah, I mean, you don't tend to see them because they get rejected. But it definitely happens. I mean, it's both a wouldn't it be cool, but also if something's a really, really, really niche use case, you have to say, it's great for you, it's not necessarily good for your project, and try and separate those things. And it's a very tough thing to do. It's very difficult as a maintainer. Probably a most important job as a maintainer is to selectively say no to patches. But yeah, it happens.
Cool. Let me think. I don't see anything in the chat. Americans catching strays out of the blue. I don't think it's out of the blue. That was the date format. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so thank you, David, if there's no further questions. Cool. So like I said, lunch still needs another 5 minutes or so to get set up. It's going to be upstairs, same area where you got your coffee and so on. And of course, we're asking for a €10 donation if you can so sacrifice yourself to KDE. Go feed yourself.